Everyone thinks that if you're dopamine detoxing, you have to be constantly bored. You have to lock yourself in a room and be like a little goblin just grinding away all day. You don't have to be bored at all while you're dopamine detoxing. These are the 5 big things that I'm currently doing to never be bored while dopamine detoxing. This is coming from someone who's been dopamine detoxing for over 9 months. Number 1, this is a big boy, taking on projects. Taking on projects is just one of the best things that you can possibly do when you're dopamine detoxing. Because what you're going to notice is when you remove all the online entertainment, you have a whole lot of time back. You have a huge void that you have to fill. Best place to fill this is with projects, with things that you know they're challenging, they might take a while. The return is going to be high. The return is going to be great. So I'll give you a few examples. I have 2 main projects I'm working on right now. First one is learning Spanish. I want to become fluent in Spanish. It's not the only language I want to be fluent in, but it's where I'm going to start. So all that time that I was spending scrolling, I was spending watching TV shows, playing video games, I just replaced that with learning Spanish. Okay? I have this project where I want to be fluent in Spanish by about halfway through next year. Cool. This project requires me doing 2, 3, 4 hours of Spanish every day. So that is my project. I'm going to work on that. I'm going to just replace the scrolling, replace the cheap dopamine with learning Spanish. That's a great project. And at the end of that, I'm fluent in another language. Fantastic. Second example is running marathons. I want to run a marathon every single month. Now, if you asked me a year ago today, do you want to run a marathon ever in your life? My answer would probably be no. I probably never run a marathon in my life. Okay? A few months into dopamine detoxing, I'm like, all right, I need a new project. I need a task to do. I need something to work towards. And the monthly marathons was a great one. It's something a friend of mine was doing. And I thought, all right, let's get on this. I had 0 running experience. I hadn't run more than 10 Ks in my entire life coming into this year. 10 Ks was my absolute limit. So I had a 2-month injury this year on top of all of that, but I was able to start running training. Within 6 weeks of training for running a marathon, I ran my first marathon, and then 4 weeks later, I ran my second. And that was last week. I'm going to keep running more and more marathons. Hopefully they become a little bit less painful. Hopefully they become a bit faster. But I've started the project. It's happening. Monthly marathons. These projects serve as a really good way of replacing what you were doing. They're replacing that 2 hours of PlayStation that you had in the afternoon. It's replacing the 2 hours of watching Netflix you had. It's replacing the time that you were spending scrolling social media throughout the day. It's a great way of replacing the behaviors that you were doing with new activities that are actually going to yield a pretty good result in the long run, right? You're working towards an outcome that you want. The second thing is creating layers to your character. And I think that's what happens when you start adding in these projects. But you're John the accountant right now, okay? And maybe you're John the accountant who has a pretty good FIFA team. Or you're John the accountant who loves watching Netflix, okay? When we start taking on these projects, when we start finding little ways that we can add layers to ourselves as a person, you become a more interesting human being. If you were John the accountant who's good at FIFA and watching Netflix, you now become John the accountant who speaks multiple languages and runs marathons and is good at the guitar and sales, right? You're just adding little layers to John the accountant. You're becoming a more interesting individual. I think the 80-20 principle really helps when it comes to creating those layers, because let's say it takes you 100 hours to be a 7 out of 10 at guitar, to have 6 to 10 songs in your repertoire that you can play really well. It might take you 1,000 hours to get to a 9 out of 10. Probably not worth your time if it's not something that you really want to do. I really want this to be one of my big things, okay? Because when you can get those 80-20s, when you can become a 7 out of 10 in a bunch of different areas, you create more layers to your character, become a more interesting person. This is where you might allocate 100 hours to the guitar. You might allocate 100 hours to being a decent chess player. You might allocate some time to getting good at tennis or getting good at golf. And just having these things that you're just pretty good at, you're just kind of competent at, you know what you can do and you can handle yourself well with, very layered and not a whole amount of time input. It helps you have a lot of things that you're pretty decent at, you're quite competent at, you can say you do, but you're not the best at. Adding those layers to your character, having those things that you're pretty decent at, just 80-20 principle, you're kind of good at them, you're not putting a huge amount of hours into them, but you're pretty competent. Having lots of those different things, creating yourself as a layered, as a multi-dimensional character, definitely a great thing to do to keep you from being bored while you're dopamine detoxing. The third thing I do here to never get bored while dopamine detoxing is going on these adventures. For some reason, people think you can't go on holiday while you're dopamine detoxing. You can't go away and do relaxing things. Of course you can. All it really means is you can't consume online entertainment. So for example, I just got back from a 1-month holiday that I took where I went to 4 different continents in 4 different weeks. We went to a bunch of weird locations. We did a bunch of weird, interesting, fun things. We were on a massive adventure. Now, was I in my grind? No. But was I dopamine detoxing? Yes. I wasn't spending any time consuming online entertainment. I was just enjoying the places I was. I was doing interesting, exciting adventures while I was there. It was a whole lot of fun. It was the best holiday I've ever had because I was just there. I was in the moment. I was experiencing, doing things. I wasn't worried about rushing back to the hotel to watch TV or start scrolling my phone or getting to a place where it has Wi-Fi. Wasn't worried about any of these things, but it allowed me to go on some fantastic adventures. Last year, I converted a van into a camper van. We now have a camper van. We can go around camping. We can go to all these strange, weird locations, go hiking, go on these great adventures. Having these adventures is just such an awesome thing. It's such a great way to never, ever be bored. Don't fall for the trap of, I'm dopamine detoxing, I have to be grinding all the time. It's not the case. It just means that you don't want to be consuming online entertainment. Doesn't mean we can't go and do these interesting things, go on these holidays, go to these weird places, do these cool adventures. You're never getting bored doing things like that. Fourth thing I do to never get bored while dopamine detoxing is socializing, being around friends and family. For some reason, we think that when we're dopamine detoxing, we have to start isolating and grinding and doing all this. This is really an opportunity where you'll actually spend more time with friends, more time with family, because you can't sit there and just waste time scrolling or consuming. You have to have some sort of fun somehow. You're probably going to revert to socializing more. I mean, this is probably the biggest way that we have been finding entertainment, having fun, avoiding boredom throughout our human history is just being around other people. We're tribal animals. Like humans, we're supposed to be around other people. When you're around other people, especially people that you like, very hard to be bored, okay? Very easy to be bored if you're sitting in a room by yourself, not interacting with other people. It's a huge part of your life in general, just having the friends, having the family, having that social interaction. And it's something that you should leverage more when you're dopamine detoxing because you have more opportunities to be bored, but you also have more free time to be spending with people that you love, with people that you want to be around. So socializing is a huge one. Do not forget about socializing. It is very, very important to do, especially while you're dopamine detoxing. The fifth thing I do to never be bored while dopamine detoxing is doing difficult things. You're never bored when you're doing something difficult. You've never got to the end of the day and said, yeah, that was a really challenging day. I did a lot of challenging things and it was boring. Okay? It might be tough. It might be hard. Very rarely boring. Okay? When I talked about the few projects I had, running the monthly marathons or learning Spanish, they're hard things. They're not easy things. They're difficult. But because they're difficult, I never get bored doing them. Same thing with adding the layers. You're generally not doing easy things. You're doing difficult things. You're not going to be bored if you're doing difficult things. What's a great way of getting bored? Sitting on the couch and just binge watching TV series all day. You can get bored really quickly because it's really easy and you're just doing nothing. You're just consuming. But when you're doing stuff, when you're doing hard stuff, good luck getting bored. Good luck getting bored if you're doing difficult things. It's probably not going to happen. So those are the 5 things that I do to never be bored while dopamine detoxing. Bear in mind, I've been doing this for over 9 months now. So I've clearly figured out a way to incorporate this into my lifestyle, not get super bored, and have longevity with such a powerful, such a beneficial thing to do. If you're interested in how to remove all of your online entertainment without requiring willpower, then I have an entire course on how to do that. I'll leave a link in the description below for you to check out. If you like this video, that's what the like button's for. Subscribe to the channel. There's probably a video somewhere around here that you might be interested in, so I will see you in one of those.